Okay, so if you got any kind of Polaris 570, you've got something similar to this bumper. This bumper has a number of accessory holes on it that I will show you, but today we're going to put a set of light bars in here, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. I'm working specifically on a 2025, but I think 2011 up. I think this area is pretty much the same. I'm not going to promise you won't have to drill a hole, but we'll show you in a minute how that mounting works. The 570 has, or your model may be different, but it has these holes. So here, 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 and there. So what we're using today is going to be these holes. And what we're mounting is a set of pod lights and this little jewel right here, which I've already got pre-configured to go right in there. So perfect fit. I will put the link in the description. Since I don't have an actual part number for this light, I will put the link to the vendor that has this light, if that's how you so choose. And then next, I have made some brackets, and these brackets are going to attach under here and put these pod lights out like so. So I'm still in the build phase on the brackets, and they still need to be painted, but as soon as I get them fitted, we'll go over how to build these brackets if this is the way you want to head. And the whole idea of this is by putting these pods out to the side, I can angle them out and get more side light on both sides. Okay, so in this case, we're going to get the fun stuff out of the way first. We're going to get the wiring in. So, if you remember from my previous videos, we installed the winch, we installed the remote handlebar mount, and we cleaned up the wiring. If you haven't seen those videos, subscribe to my channel and they'll show up. So what I did yesterday was I attached a wire. I disconnected the high beam, and so the next segment of this is going to be a show and tell with some pictures. So in this picture, I've taken a male spade and I have effectively cut it in half. The reason for this will be evident in a minute, but what you need to do is trim that down so it will go into the positive side of the high beam harness on the Polaris without modifying the plug or having to cut any wires. So you'll want to get you can do it with a grinder, a pair of dikes, anything like that, and that will determine you want something that looks, about halfway. It'll work good. So in this picture, I have disconnected the harness from the back of the high beam headlight. As mentioned earlier, I've got the box on the front of the quad, which makes the high beam ineffective, so we just disabled it. You can get to this harness by twisting the bulb socket counterclockwise, pulling the bulb out, and usually with like a jeweler's screwdriver you can pop these clips loose unless you have a clip remover, but you're going to end up with this gray harness with the black end on it. You're going to tap the brown wire. The brown wire here is the positive wire. So we're going to make a connection now with the brown wire. So in the first picture I showed you how to modify the spade connector by effectively just cutting it down the middle in half and leaving one edge. So this is the same plug from the last picture with the brown wire. We've connected a wire now to our male spade lug that's been modified, and we have plugged it into our connector. So with everything now connected, I grab my Super 88 electrical tape and just needs to seal it and isolate it. As you can tell, I'm not very pretty in this picture, but it works. So just insulate it good where it can't come in contact with anything, and then stow that wire back behind the headlight, and then you can route it down following the harness from the dash back down to where the battery is at. So for our harness, we have a relay, a fuse, and our connectors. Then we have another wire that has a connector on it, and also a switch. So it's standard lighted toggle switch. So we are going to be using the white wire out of the center of that switch. This white wire right here is the one that will trigger the relay. Now you want this relayed to battery. You don't want this to drive clear off of the high beam switch, because chances are there's enough amperage there to burn it out. And I'm not going to take the chance. So the rest of the harness is set up with pre-built pigtails. So there's the center bar, the outside bar on that one, and then on the other wiring you have just the outside bar. So if you're doing it pretty, like I like to do it, you're going to have a tendency to want to shorten all this stuff up. It's going to take longer. I think for this video I'm just going to install it, hook it up, and then I'll come back and do my own cleanup. So we'll just run them through, and I'll show you how to zip tie them up if you don't have the tools and the spades to shorten and make a custom wire out of it. So we'll get that routed in. We'll be right back. Now that you can see how we got the wiring down here, we're just going to throw that aside, and what we got to think about is how to get this loom down to the lights, because again, I'm going to keep this in the dry as much as possible. So my thinking is I probably will stash the relay over here in a hole, and then bring the wiring up and around the battery, and it'll be a nice tight little fit, but it'll work. And so let me get things started, and then since I'm have no support staff today for the recording, we'll just do this step by step, and I'll show you what we got going on. The relay is now tucked in a little cubby hole right back in there. We've got some excess wire coming up, but there's our switch wire. We'll throw it over there. This is our power wire. The other two wires have been run down, and if we go down below the fender, you'll see where they've come out. So we're just going to pull all of that excess through, so we kind of get that kind of look. Starting to get a little bottled up in there, so we'll probably have to do some cleanup later on. But now it's just bringing them out and routing them where they need to go. So you can see there's our two wires. One's going to go to the middle light. So we'll keep routing. We'll show you how it works. Now with the wires routed, we've got one wire coming out for the light on this side. We've got our light for the center. And the thing that's driving me nuts is there's about 10 feet of extra wire. Well, realistically, there's 6 feet of extra wire that I am not going to be able to deal with. But anyway, you can route that light out through the little hole and then stuff it back. My suggestion would be is you hook all your lights up first, get everything working, and then tie up any excess cable. So we're going to continue working on that. Talk about routing. So I have gone down through the winch hole with the cable, and we've come out underneath the fender. Now I have opted to go over the top of the coolant recovery tank, over the crash bar on the front, and this is going to be one of my tie points right here. So you can see from the back where we have pulled the center light wiring through. We'll be pulling that back through once we get the light connected. We've got about this much left over on that. That's not the end of the world. Again, we have got way too much wire for this right side light. So we are going to shorten that up, but we'll have to do it after we get the lights mounted. So we're at a stage right now that we can continue on with the assembly of the lights. Now another note on these bar lights is once you get them on there, you're not going to be able to reach back there and adjust them. At least not in a way I figured out to do it yet. So what I'm doing initially is I've got them centered with the hole, and I've just got them adjusted all the way down, because these are spot and flood. I'm not really sure their position is going to make a heck of a hill of beans, because this thing's going to probably blast out there quite a ways anyway. Only the true test will come when we get them on there. But those bolts that hold this on are 14 millimeter. So don't think you can grab a 13 millimeter wrench and do everything with it, because it's not going to work. So get your wrench sizes before you get going. And we're going to get these in place now. Get the brackets on. And we'll be right back. So again, here's our bracket. So the important thing is the fender bolts right here comes very close to where those mounting holes drop through. So you're going to make a bracket. This is alloyed mild steel with stainless, but I painted it anyway. It's not pretty. Quads aren't pretty when you get them. Well, they're probably prettier in my opinion when they're dirty. So you want to build a bracket that's 8.5 inches long, but you want to put the first hole 3/8 of an inch in from one end, and then bring the other bracket, and I'll do center hole exactly 1 inch from the other end. So this will allow you to clear that bumper bracket when you go to put it on. So we're going to get those in place now. They're all painted. I use Krylon wrinkle finish, or hammered look I think is the new term for it. So we're going to get those bolted in place, and we're going to mock them up, see what they look like. I might note, same thing with the pod lights. Just set them out there, tighten them up, 14 millimeter again. Like I said, I'm just going all the way. These might be a little bit more adjustable once we get them on. We can reach under there with a 14 millimeter wrench, but for now I'm going to snug them up pretty good, get ready for the install. So back at you with the pod. So there's the first pod light. We're going to bolt it on right now. Where do you put it? Well, I don't know. That's personal preference. It looks like they might be aimed a little bit high with that bracket, but see how they tuck in there? That's kind of why the bracket is important. Anyway, you just tighten them down, but yeah, that may be hitting the trees, but the good news is you can reach back here with your 14 millimeter and adjust those down. This one will be a bigger bear if it needs to go down, which I am not sure it will. That will be another trick altogether. This pretty much means you got to take the whole thing apart. So we're going to do the other pod light now. Again, it's the same as the other side. Try to get it where we want it. Now, yeah, maybe it might be worth running a reinforcement bar down that. We'll see how it bounces. I'm not that concerned about it off-roading at night. Maybe a treat in itself, but alright, so I'm going to do a little adjustment on these, and then we'll show you how they look, and then we'll get them wired up. The good news is I reached in behind with the 14mm wrench and we adjusted the pods. I threw a protractor on them just to see if I could get them close to the same. I don't know if they're right. Nighttime will tell. This one, yeah, we'll also see. You want high beams anyway, so if this thing burns retinas out a mile down the road, so be it. Alright, so the wiring. So wiring. So this kit gives you, as we showed you previously, a bunch of these spade connectors. So they are male. They don't give you any extra females in case you want to shorten the wire. So if you're a manufacturer of these lights, charge us an extra 50 cents and throw in a half a dozen of those, will ya? We won't have to run to our hardware store to get them. Fortunately, I've got them. I've got the non-insulated type, but we're going to heat shrink them anyway. So first thing we want to do is we're going to adjust this back in there. So we're just going to leave this length, and I'm going to go grab some heat shrink tubing. So I basically got a wire fly kit. It's got a bunch of different sizes in it, and we're going to open this up, determine what we need, and trim any excess. Let's see what will go over it now. That's all small stuff, and that's all really big stuff. So it looks like we're stuck with this design right here. So we don't need near that much. So we're going to take one piece. Standard disclaimer applies if you cut your thumb off. It's not my fault. Be friends with your knives and they won't cut you. Just don't give them a reason. Alright, so we're going to do the heat shrink tubing, and we've got the Japanese tinning on here. But I am just going to do away with that because I don't like to crimp wires that short. If you're really good, you can use your side cutters, dikes, whatever you want to call them, to strip your wire back. From there, we're going to throw a connector on. Get ourselves lined up in the correct slot here. Why don't we do that first? So I like the drive slot in there versus just the crimp slot. Your crimpers may vary, but we're just going to stick them in there, crimp them down. You got to be cognizant when your heat shrink falls off, so I I did catch it this time. It's kind of like flaring a brake line and then looking and realizing that you forgot to put the nut on it before you flared it. Alright, so we are red to red, black to black. Polarity counts here, folks. These LEDs only work one way. Looks like they're going to be a bit of a challenge to put on. I'm not really sure why they went with two manufacturers on these. Probably completely different factories made the harness than who made the lights, but this is going to be a bear. Okay, there's one. There's two. So now we'll just pull them down in place and heat shrink them. There you go. So at this point, we reach back here and follow that through, and then we'll have to tie it up. Now this guy over here, as I said, I don't like him. He's too long, so we're going to shorten. So let me may need to reset camera angles for this. So okay, so here I've measured from that crash bar from the inside that we talked about earlier, that I'm going to zip tie my excess to. Now I got a lot of excess hanging down from that other side. I'll have to deal with it. This one we're going to cut off, so I measured from that crash bar over as much as I need for the light and give myself a little bit to tie up. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off. And put the crimpers up there and prepare ourselves to do a little surgery. So you got to take this outer shield off without cutting the inner shield. Make sure excess makes it in the trash. Now I could strip the wires that way, or we can just use the crimpers to do that. I have figured out that the harnesses and the lights were both made in different factories. I think these harnesses are probably something that the Chinese or Japanese did universal, because this wire on the harness is much bigger, 18 gauge compared to 22 on the lights. So if it was the same factory, it would have made sense that they used the same wires. So anyway, there we go. That was a little harder to strip, but now we're going to take our female spade connectors. We need to get 2 of them, and I don't have any immediate volunteers that want to just fall out. Okay, so at this point we're going to put crimps on our new wires. Again, we're going to go out to, I like the pin collapse on those versus just the flat crimp. As I said, your crimpers may vary by design. These are GB crimpers, if you're interested. And they're made specifically for the dolphin connectors. So if you don't know what a dolphin connector is, you can look those up. Because we're not going to use them here. Alright, so we need to do the same thing here. And it looks like we're going to have to strip somebody back just a little bit so we can get our heat shrink on. So I'll go ahead and crimp these. We'll be right back. Okay, so here's a little trick that I do. So to get the heat shrink tubing on there out of the way while you heat one and don't melt the other one. Of course you could heat them at the same time, but what I will do is I will split the loom back, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So we're going to go ahead and make our connections. My connections are a lot higher quality, so these will go together most likely. Now it's going to make a liar of me. Of course I'm using inferior quality spades. Okay, so they're going to look like that, red to red, black to black. I can't reiterate that enough. We lost one. Okay, so there's what inexpensive connectors do. So you've seen the first screw up of the day. Fortunately, I have other stuff. So we're going to try this a little different direction. You will crimp. Yes, you will. Okay. So we just crimped another one on there. Same thing applies. Like I said, I can't say it enough. Red to red, black to black. You can bring your heat shrink on if you so desire, like so. Lean back, grab the torch. And you can just heat them both at the same time. Now the other trick is I've taken a full piece and I've split the loom back. So I'm going to put the wires back in the loom, and I'm going to bring the heat shrink right up against everything for an added layer of protection. So I use the full length piece. And we'll shrink that on there. Very good for abrasion resistance. Alright, so we got that done. So this one's hooked up, this one's hooked up. I'm going to go ahead and hook that one up. It's just the same as the other one, and we'll be right back. So now we're left with our wiring for the switch and the wiring for our lights. So there's our relay. Okay, we'll get that out of the way first. Now in my previous videos, 10mm wrench by the way, in my previous videos I mentioned that the negative wire comes off first and it goes on last. This is just a safety so that you don't accidentally short something out while doing this. So I'm going to follow that rule, and we're going to remove that ground. So the bike now is effectively circuit dead. I'm going to reach over now with our 10mm, and we're going to take the positive off part of the way. And we want to grab our star washer that's on there, and our flat washer. And now finding the wires for our winch. Oh, those are awful big terminals. Okay, so if we're going to make these work as is, then we're just going to pull the terminal out. We're going to exercise that guy right on there like so. So hopefully you can see that. These are really big ring terminals. So we're just going to pinch them in there for this. And then we're going to reassemble. So we put our washer, our star washer on. And our nut. And as soon as it starts getting snug, you're going to want to make sure that you've got the maximum amount of contact in there as you can, so you shouldn't see any of that copper sticking out. Now, if I was doing this over, I would get 5/16 lugs and put on there, but we're doing this as if we don't have all of these tools around and parts. So this is a straightforward install with basic hand tools. Alright, so now we're going to do the negative. And sorry for the interruption, we had to take a short pause for the cause. So again, same way, we put our little copper guy on there. If you haven't done my winch install, then this will look a whole lot different. But we've done a winch install and we put the winch remotes up on the handlebars. You can check that out in one of my other videos. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll be able to see them. So if you want to know how to do the winches and the wiring and the remote handlebar mount, they're all there. And I'll have some other videos coming up for the Polaris quads as well. So again, negative on first, off first, negative on last. Negative off first, negative on last. Now we put the boot back in place. Now we got this remote wire. So I'm not going to make a mess of this. What I'm going to do is, what I want is that white wire as we discussed before. The white wire will be what energizes the relay. Now, this red wire's already got power to it because we just hooked it up to the battery. So we don't want to goof with that wire. We're going to want to separate the white wire and insulate it. So it creates a little bit of surgery here now that we've hooked it up. It's going to make me have to clip each one of the wires separately. Now I'm going to go short. I'm going to go down really short. So what I got to do is carefully cut the insulation off without getting into the wires. Because remember, that one red one is hot and that black one is ground. And you get extra fuses in this kit probably just for that reason. So what we're attempting to do right now is get those showing. Get a little piece of this jacket that's being stubborn. We're just going to clip it, pull it down, and then we're going to separate these wires out and clip them separately. So let me grab a pair of dikes. So again, we're not using the red wire. So you want to insulate that. You want to insulate it separate from the black wire. So we're going to get this red wire out of the way because it's now hot. Let the black one hang there. And I'm going to grab this white wire. So at this point, we're going to strip that wire back, and we're going to grab our connectors. As well as another piece of heat shrink tubing. So again, here's the red wire we started with. I don't need a lot of it, but we're going to do a little excess just so it gets clipped back. So we'll go ahead and cut that, get that out of the way, flip that back a little bit. Now, I have been asked, being a mechanic for over 30 years, which side gets the spade, female, and which one gets the male. Well, continuity of the industry has always said that you put the female to the hot side. Now, it doesn't matter whether they're insulated or not, but a lot of your females are insulated and your males are not. So in this case, we are just simply going to follow the standard that I was told and taught. Like I said in my trainings over 30 years ago. So we don't need all of this heat shrink tubing, so we'll cut it down a little bit. And at this point, we're going to connect that. Oh, and it came apart. So that's a do-over. Look at that, folks. That didn't crimp very well. That's my second failure of the day. But fortunately, we've got excess tools and parts. So I'm going to play the full on this one. This wire is so small. We'll push the whole thing up through there. And we'll crimp it that way. Remember, keep that hot out of the way till you get it insulated. Alright. So what do we do with the hot wire? Well, we're not too concerned, as long as it doesn't touch anything. So all I'm going to do here is I've got a roll of Super 88 electrical tape. This is the wide stuff. Super 33 is the narrower stuff. This is the wider stuff. So I'm very simply going to fold that red wire down, grab it, make a loop that insulates that. Then I'm going to fold the black wire down opposite of it, and as I come around with the last loop of tape, I'm going to grab that and insulate that also. So now we're going to take the red wire and we're going to put on our heat shrink tubing. We're going to make our connection, pull our heat shrink tubing up, which will also go over part of our Super 88. Not very far. We don't want this to touch ground. And then hit it with the torch, shrink it down, and we're good to go. Alright. Hey, you know what we're down to? We're down to cleaning this up, getting this stowed aside so the lid will shut, and we're going to test. Key off, ignition on, low beams, high beams. Now there's some light. Alright, so if you like what we're doing here, like the page, subscribe to the channel. These are popular. I'll make more of them. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.